Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Meeting of the Legislative Review Committee. We have a quorum. We have an agenda. We have two items on the agenda. The first, examining marijuana penalty options. The second, review regulation of gas-powered leaf blowers as it pertains to our noise ordinance. Everyone approve of the agenda?
Yes.
Great. Okay, the minutes are in front of you. Does anybody see any changes they'd like to make to the minutes? Okay.
They're very good minutes.
I make a motion that minutes be adopted.
Minutes are adopted. No changes to the minutes. Okay, we've got some time carved out for public input. Are there any members of the public who'd like to address the committee? You get 3 minutes. All right, moving right along. Let's go to item number 1. Examine the marijuana penalty options. We had some steps we've set forth at our last meeting, requesting staff to help us out through this task. So, Mr. Jones, do you have something for us you'd like to shepherd through?
Well, I think we don't have a presentation prepared, but I think this is worthy of discussion. So we were asked to kind of seek out other advice, if you will, from different municipalities who have gone through this and potentially see how, the enforcement's gone for them. We have not heard back from the folks we've reached out to. We'll continue to do so. But just to kind of recap from the last meeting, we heard a lot of data from our police. We also heard from Solicitor Chisholm. The DA chimed in quite a bit, and Mr. Donnelly did so as well, which was a great conversation. One of the points of conversation maybe we should talk about today is whether or not an actual local ordinance makes sense for us, and if so, what kind of direction would you like us to take on it? We also provided some best practices in past meetings as well, from what other municipalities have done. So we're ready to incorporate some of that into our ordinance if we so choose.
Okay. Do I hear any input from the committee regarding requests to staff to present a draft ordinance or et cetera, et cetera?
I don't know if it's a request. I'm still questioning just from my last meeting whether an ordinance at this time was necessary.
Okay.
And I did get an email from Mr. Donnelly, basically saying that it may not be necessary, but I dropped the ball. I didn't get back with him.
That's fine.
And so, okay.
Do you have any motion you'd like to make to direct anything
I would like
for
to
staff? Anything?
That I don't have the staff, but I would like to make a motion for my personal understanding that we put on hold moving forward on the ordinance until I have that conversation with Mr. Donnelly, which I'll make sure I'll do before next month.
Okay. I know we got some information that's still looming for staff to collect. There's a motion on the floor to not really, I guess, just to kind of hold any, just to not do anything at this moment. Fine. Do you have any actions you'd like to see taken?
I would like to take action on this.
Yeah.
I would like to move forward with an ordinance locally. It does make sense to me for the reasons I outlined in the previous meeting.
Right.
My conversations with Mr. Donnelly and other people at the public defender's office and other attorneys in town, they seem to be of the mind, I would say fairly collectively, that there is utility in this. We have seen a die down in prosecution because of a gap in the hemp laws that's currently written. But that doesn't preclude the purpose of this still potentially being very important in the future if that state law changes.
So would you like to make a motion to request staff to maybe present a draft ordinance?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
In preparation of the draft ordinance.
I'll make a motion to request staff present draft ordinance for us to consider.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I made a motion, so we need to vote me down and come back to him.
Okay. Well, your motion was just kind of, I mean, that's fine.
My motion is to hold this until we get further information. That's my motion. I'm not directing staff to move.
Okay, all right.
Other than the work they've already started, the work they're still waiting to get input from. And that's what you're saying. You're still waiting to get some information, right? I'm just saying that,
I'm just trying to think about your motion. I mean, that's fine. Your motion is for us to not do anything now.
other than what is already in the pipeline, that's
Okay.
what I'm saying. I do not expect staff to come back with a draft ordinance at the next meeting.
Okay,
That's what I'm saying.
so it's almost like a motion for us to move to the next agenda item, basically.
Yes.
I mean, that's technically what it is, right?
I'm not asking staff to come back with a draft ordinance next month.
Right, I get that.
I'm
Yes.
saying, let's keep the pathway going.
Yes,
And then next month, we get the information, and then there should be a motion for the staff to bring us back a draft ordinance.
okay, got it, okay.
So that's my motion. Whatever,
Okay.
wherever you can word
I
it.
just think how that'll, hey, Commissioner Wright, welcome.
Okay.
Okay, so, I mean, I feel like
It's essentially a motion to table.
it's a motion, yeah, it's a motion just to take no action on this item and move to the next agenda item, so.
Okay, that,
Yeah.
I can live with that,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
All right, so is there a second?
I'll second, even though I just got here. Or is this, we just talking about this top item?
Yeah,
Move on to the
Commissioner
next.
Thornton's motion is for us to take no further action on this in this meeting and to move to the next agenda item.
Okay, and I missed what information was shared, but it wasn't longer than,
It was nothing
Yes.
new. It was nothing new.
Okay.
And that was my point. Staff is still waiting
okay,
for information to come back. I had a conversation with Mr. Donnelly, and my motion, which is different from Commissioner Hool, is I think Commissioner Hool is recommending that staff comes back at the next meeting with a draft ordinance. And I'm saying,
yeah, I'm not ready for that either. And the other thing, I don't know if you guys have looked at the sample ballot for May 24. Some of you may already know about it. There's Democratic Party question number 8 and 10 deals with marijuana. So I don't know if that,
Okay, so.
how that affects what we do in committee.
May I speak to you?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Yeah, go ahead.
So we've reached out to a number of municipalities for their feedback. They're under no obligation to get back to us. So the fact that they haven't for the past month doesn't make me think that they're any more likely to in another month. I'm not convinced that we need more information from those municipalities. We have a couple dozen municipalities around the state who have passed ordinances like this, and none of them have been struck down in a court. That gives me confidence that we can move forward here and have a similar experience in Athens-Clarke County. So in my mind, it's not a question of whether we should have an ordinance, just what it should contain. I think there's a good discussion to have about the elements of that ordinance. But on a basic level, having a local ordinance to decriminalize possession of an ounce or less seems to me to be something that's well within our purview and has been vetted by so many other communities that we could just at least instruct staff to give us a template to work from in our next meeting so that these meetings can become productive and hopefully we can move this out of committee before a full year goes by.
I still stand with my second because I do, from the minutes, the information that I was interested in to understand how the other municipalities are dealing with this since 2019 in the hemp law. That's the detail that's important to me.
and I'm going to not change my position because I would like to have that one-on-one conversation with Mr. Brown.
Okay.
And he emailed me, I didn't reach out to him.
Okay.
I guess it's curious to me that we're going to delay action because there hasn't been either action by people we don't have control over from other communities or because members of this committee haven't done more in the past month. Like that seems like a bad reason to stall ourselves further.
It might have been, I agree, but I'm still.
Okay, I think we've kind of hashed that one out. So
that also would end discussion on this, so we can't even discuss anything else that came up in the last meeting. Am I clear on that?
there would be no further action taken on this item. We'd move to the next item on the agenda. Yeah. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Aye. All right. So putting that one to bed for now. We'll circle back next month.
Commissioner Edwards,
Sure.
next month, to be clear, if we get the information back, present that information that we hear from the other municipalities. Was there anything else that staff needs to prepare for?
On this,
Not that I know of, not at this time. I believe so. I mean, the motion that the committee's passed is to basically, wait for what.
We'll provide an update at the next meeting.
and Mr. Chair, I will make sure I will have that conversation and get it to you and you can send it to staff.
I mean, I've met with Mr. Donnelly about 6 times on this.
But you know what?
All right. Order. Hold on. I don't have a gavel, but I have a little fist here. So we're gonna soldier on. Motion passed. There's no further action to be taken by staff until next month. We're waiting more information. And then next month's meeting, motions can be considered and we can move forward then. Thank you for attending, sir. All right. Next up, the gas-powered leaf blowers. And, I would like to just start off by saying at the last meeting, I was curt, and I wanted to apologize to staff, in particular to Suki Jansen. I think sometimes I get this idea that, I've used an electric leaf blower, so why can't we just snap our fingers and have everybody else use them? Obviously that can't be the case. And this is a large organization. We have 40 gas blowers. We can't just wave a wand and all of a sudden use batteries. So, Ms. Jansen, I know that I was a little irritated about the proper storage of batteries or whatever, but I apologize for my exasperated tonal inflection, perhaps, is what came across. So moving forward, though, turning to a new page to this item. With that in mind, how a transition could occur in a productive way, I just wanted to throw something out to staff that there is a gentleman with the American Green Zone Alliance who helps governments transition to electric landscaping equipment, and he travels all around the country. He's been to Decatur recently, and he helps staff. He works with staff about proper storage and usage of these tools. And anyway, his phone number is 310-779-9785, and his name is Daniel Mabe. And, you can help us. You don't have to fly blind through this. So anyway, I kind of tracked down that information. I heard he went to Decatur, met with the management staff. They had a great meeting, researching, trying different tools, figuring out workflows, battery storage, all the problems, some of the problems that we've encountered here so far. So that might be something useful for us as we move along through here.
And I would assume, since he's an expert in this area, he would also be able to give us some information about the transitional cost and financial implication it would have also.
Well, we got a lot of that at the last meeting, too.
So, but would it, from him, would it, okay, well, I'm good. Everything with me is on the dollar, it's based on the dollar now. It's based on the dollar.
Everything.
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 That's my husband.
Everything.
That's my husband.
Everything. All right. So, Mr. Jones, what have you for us on this topic today to sort of get us going?
Sure. So first and foremost, thanks for the introduction. And, I feel like our staff is just as passionate as you are, so we appreciate the passion that you bring. And at the last meeting, we talked about health and safety, PPE, battery storage, and we showed a 3-year projection of how we can transition from gas to electric, and we were asked to do a 2-year. So we're prepared to provide you with a 2-year transition plan. In addition to that, health and safety, we have some updates, PPE, we have updates, and storage, we have updates. And I think our staff is here to present today. So Gavin will lead us off, but solid waste and leisure services presentations are both wrapped into one. So it's just one big presentation.
All right. Come to the table.
Well, thank you all. Appreciate that. Next slide, please, sir. Okay. So based on the input that we received from the committee the last time around, I know we presented a lot of numbers to you, but the direction we got this time around is let's focus on some of the other topics. And so we'll try to do that in a couple slides. From a health and safety standpoint, what we've done here, especially from a central services standpoint, which as far as departments go, you know, I think we tend to have the most equipment related to that based on our divisional needs. But between two-cycle and battery, we've outlined some of the major topics, whether that's the fuel and power and how, you know, obviously carbon emissions are concerned with two-cycle versus a clean source of power with a battery. We've talked about how, you know, two-cycle is readily available because we've also used it for a very long time and we're familiar with it. There is some limitations to battery use. Obviously, they run dry after a period of time and need to be recharged, but nonetheless, they do have a longer lifespan if done properly. There are those differences between power. You know, naturally, when you have a two-cycle engine, it is going to be able to effectively give off more power than some of the battery-operated ones. That said, from a health and safety standpoint, they are lower in decibels when you talk about battery operated. It's easier on the ears, if you will. Some of our operating restrictions, there's really no restrictions right now with two-cycle because, again, we're just used to using it. I would say we can get to that same status, especially over time with battery operated. It's not impossible. It's just newer technology that we're not as familiar with. We can get there. And we just have to be wary of some of the weather conditions, especially when traveling on some of our trucks. I know that other departments like solid waste, even leisure services, a lot of their equipment can be stored at multiple locations throughout town. We can also try to piggyback on that. We know we're going to parks and things like that. That said, our landscape crews are out in the field for 8 hours a day, and they don't come back to the office until the end of the day. And so whether it's raining or whether it's 110 degrees outside, we have to be aware and ready for that sort of storage on our battery equipment.
Or below freezing, which is,
Sure.
right, Russell, the big thing. So,
Yes. Environmental impacts, I won't go through all of them. I think a lot of people are familiar with the fact that two-cycle versus battery, yes. Battery is going to tend to lean more on the environmentally safe side and have a good impact. Same with health. You know, certainly the emissions that come from a two-cycle engine, they are a cause for concern. We do equip our staff with safety equipment to hopefully mitigate that. But yes, battery, we anticipate helping to offset.
Always an opportunity to also chime in from your responses if you have anything.
Yeah, so the only thing to really add is, again, we provide the PPE. There really isn't a huge difference between the PPE provided between the gas and the electric. And I did bring one of the electrics, one of the bigger commercial ones that you guys can pick up and see all the time.
I don't know that I have really anything to add at this juncture with the PPE, or I do want to speak to the generator that Mike brought in for us, but that one.
I guess for me, to just sort of kick off my reaction to this initial point of the presentation, I am concerned with the use of a dust mask when using these tools, and in particular downtown. I think downtown, you know, we're blowing a lot of impervious surfaces that collect all the waste and debris from everywhere, right? Brake dust, animal feces, mold spores. I mean, it's an urban environment, you know, it's not like blowing leaves at Sandy Creek Park, you know, where you're still getting some mold spores and dust. But I feel like there's more toxicity likely in an urban environment where you have 200-mile-per-hour wind velocity hitting concrete. It throws an immense amount of dust in the air surrounding. So I'm concerned for the operators, but also I do want us to think about how that affects the experience of downtown. You know, for folks who are visiting downtown and maybe walking through a cloud of dust, or know that we schedule it strategically so there's a minimal amount of people, but still, nobody wants to walk through a toxic dust cloud when they're trying to enjoy the store. I think this is sort of a multi-level issue too. I mean, I'm always fussing with the manager, not with them, but reporting to the manager when I see somebody using a wet saw without a hose and they're just cutting concrete. There was somebody cutting a sidewalk in front of the hospital yesterday. There was like a cumulus cloud out on Prince Avenue, just silica dust that people are breathing in. I mean, this is actions that the government can take to create a safer environment, just through small changes, I think, in our code section and ordinances. You know, so, anybody else have something? I'm really concerned about the dust downtown. I'm concerned about our employees using these machines.
No, I appreciate the health and safety part of this and everything that's happening from up to the person actually using the equipment. I used a leaf blower for the first time in my life recently. And just to get the pollen off in my own residence. And I realized, boy, I should have had a mask on. And so I appreciate you capturing the multitude of things that are being, not just coming from the equipment, but literally stirred up because of it as well. So I appreciate what we can do for staff while they're working for us. And typically a person will stop when somebody comes along. And I think that probably speaks to some of the early leaf blowing noise that we get downtown. It's because it's trying to be done when there's less population. Right. Yeah, so there's that balance that we're also trying to work with.
And for any outdoor dining open, nobody wants this leaf blowing when they're trying to eat.
Yeah.
Drink coffee. You want to get through before all that stuff happens.
Yeah, and that was my point, because I really didn't think about just the people downtown. You know, I know that our staff will take every measure to be safe and covered and stuff, but being able to have times where population is a little lower or a lot lower, we need to consider, because I hadn't thought about that. You get that magnificent example of the cumulus cloud.
But I think the electric, the transition to electric will likely most help us downtown, because we're stuck in a situation where we're trying not to disturb all these new residents who are sleeping downtown and also not disturb people during the day who are walking around. So we're kind of trying to find a place we can still do it, but electrical's quieter. We'll probably disturb fewer sleepers.
So what do we need to do to move this forward? Does staff need a recommendation from us on a 2 or 3 year plan to pursue, or do we need to go through specific things that it entails, or what's?
Do we have more presentation?
There's more of a presentation.
Keep going.
Excuse me. Get to
There's
this
it.
dollar.
You had
Get
it.
to this dollar.
Oh, okay. Battery storage. I'm sorry. So again, as far as battery storage, we in central services having a large number of the blowers, we would locate them in our secured area, in our large building. We have room to put these. It would take a couple $1,000 investment just to make some of those capital improvements as far as the power source that we would have to put in the building to have almost 80 batteries charging at one time. But you know, it's not significant in the grand scheme of things. I would say we would also see an increase in the electric.
Oh, sorry for a moment. 80 batteries, we're thinking that would be the daily requirement?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then obviously we would see an increase in our electric bill, but that would also be offset from the fuel savings as well. So, challenges, I sort of talked about it earlier. We will certainly look, like the other departments, to try and not only store these in the appropriate place, but have different areas around town where we can pick up an extra battery or have an extra battery charging when possible. That may include some minor upgrades to those storage closets or things like that. But
do any of our trucks have outlets in them? I know the newer F-150s have outlets. No, none of our fleet. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
We can certainly also look into more storage capability on our actual vehicles. But like I said, until we find something, until we are comfortable with something, there is the good chance that a lot of those blowers and batteries are going to be sitting on the back of the truck for up to 8 hours a day. But again, we can manage with that. From a leisure services and
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, leader service. I see solid waste. I apologize.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, Mike Wharton, just brought in this box right here for us. It's an electric generator. And so we're gonna attempt, because the charm, it's not practical for us to go back and forth to the charm. So we have a staff member that's willing early morning. He loves being at work at like 4:30. He's awesome to have. So he picks up all the charm batteries, comes downtown for the other litter tech. And this generator will be brought with them now. And so that can be in the back of one of our electric vehicles and can charge the batteries. So we don't have to go back and forth to the charm. Mike, off of sustainability, purchased it for us. So I think we're the first department that's going to try it to see if it'll help from traveling to wherever batteries are located. So I'll give an update as to how that works. And can I introduce somebody here? Is that right? This is Freddie Hardy. We're excited to almost have the fullest staff we've had in years. And we stole Freddie from UGA. So he's running our collections division for us now. And so he's running new. So I wanted to bring him because ultimately he's the person in charge of our staff downtown.
Thank you. So for leisure services, we have the ability to replace each cost. I wouldn't say cost center. I mean, Sandy Creek Park's a cost center, Bishop Park's a cost center. So by doing a phased implementation, a funded phased implementation, we would be able to just kind of in kind swap, and we wouldn't have to have a centralized location in central services. It makes sense for them. For us, we just have to spread throughout. We would see the gas savings, but we could also, like the increases, would just be dispersed amongst cost centers. That's kind of a nice thing. That's an advantage that we have, and we do work with facilities at parks a lot, and so it'd be nice if we're using the same system, and we could share chargers and share batteries. So we've always worked together.
And I think, my concerns for downtown are almost mirrored at the parks, but in different ways. Our citizens go to parks for tranquility, solace, appreciation of nature, and the 85 decibel noise just destroys that for a lot of people. So I'm really glad that y'all are recognizing that and helping out. I mean, it's just a better place to hang out than quieter nature. You can hear the birds in the breeze. So carry on.
I'll follow up a little bit with what Cindy was saying. So what this concept is right now when the electric vehicles come out, especially the Ford F-150 license, which they are hopefully producing this summer, we'll have the capacity to do onboard charging. So what that means is instead of having to carry 4 batteries, potentially, if they work the way they're supposed to, then we can carry 2 batteries, one charging, one being used. But to drastically cut down the amount of batteries. So we're trying to bridge between that. We've got a lot of inventory in stock that does not have that capacity. We have remote sites, and you keep jumping with what that looks like. So we researched into this electric generator with the concept of being able to essentially bridge that gap. So now you'll have that on board. It charges up. It can do multiple batteries over time. And so again, we might be able to reduce down to just 2 batteries each time and then just charge that. It's even potential we plug that in and plug the batteries into that charger. And because it has a brain, it will regulate flow. So there's some things that Suki is willing to play around with to see how it can best be deployed to kind of make that transition while we were waiting for these electric vehicles to get out into the field the next year.
That's great.
Thank you.
And again, I know we presented a lot of numbers to y'all last time, and none of that has really changed. All we did in this slide is break it down based on the suggestion of a 2-year implementation. And so, at least the numbers you see on this slide are from a central services standpoint. I haven't factored in solid waste or leisure services. I'm sure there will be some additional costs for that as well, but our inventory is the highest. And so this is kind of where it's coming from. Keep in mind, this is based on the information we could find on probably the most impressive example that we've been given so far. It's not a cheap apparatus, it's the apparatus behind you. That is sort of the higher end of equipment that's out there. There's certainly less expensive equipment, and we can always look into that.
That might could be used for different size jobs.
Correct, correct. So this really, from our standpoint,
That's what I was thinking, maybe this consultant's expertise could help too. Because he's traveled all over the nation helping multiple governments with these types of questions, maybe looking at the workflow, different jobs, where the jobs are. So.
No, I appreciate that. And we just wanted to present to you sort of a worst case scenario. We think that this is what the most it would be, it can certainly be scaled back once we get into the bids and looking at other equipment. But to purchase at least 20 of the 40 leaf blowers in the first year, there's your cost, along with some associated operating costs, which includes replacement batteries and backup, as well as any kind of maintenance with repairs. Same for the second year. We would purchase the remaining 20. We'd still have that associated cost for replacement batteries and maintenance. And then from the third year on, we would have our full 40 fleet of leaf blowers, but it would just be the ongoing operating costs, as well as occasionally the 3 to 5 year capital replacement that would go with that.
Cool.
I have a question here. Have we, in terms of funding, have we explored with the leaf blowers the idea of supplementing, if there are extra costs that would go beyond the standard leaf blowers, supplementing that with money from the SPLOST 2020 Renewable Energy Program, like we did with vehicles, or like we're doing with police vehicles?
I think we could certainly do so. I don't know if we've done that just yet. To my knowledge, and might be able to speak to that, there may not be an earmark currently in some of the SPLOST funding that would apply directly to leaf blowers. We can certainly talk about that and some different initiatives, but that's something we would have to look into a little bit further. We're open to anything.
Yeah.
I can follow up on that. So in looking ahead, we've been, one of the things is we try to get our staff up to full speed, which, by the way, which it is going to Djibouti after that. So starting over there. But the concept will be, because actually the fire department and I have been in some pretty good discussions. They wanted to start it off with converting their equipment over to batteries. And then I talked to Andrew before the out position about doing the same thing. So it's going to be, how can we start transitioning all of our small tool electric over to electric? What does that look like? How do we standardize? What would the batteries? What's this transition look like when the generators are not? So we have in mind going forward to try to, as a matter of fact, you have an name for it, fire is setting things on fire and moving forward with electric. So the idea would be to begin to move us toward that transition as a program, so we can more scale it out and get that. And we may start with specific equipment or do the general inventory. And so fire has actually started inventorying all of their stock to see what that would look like. And then we're going to do the same thing with leisure services and central services and try to scale that over the 5 years to move it toward that, to go 100% after.
But I think it's just important to keep in mind that we will certainly work with Mike. And like he said, there is some money available over scaled 5 years. If we choose to do a 2-year plan though from now, not all of that money is going to be available for our use, and we're talking close to, you know, again, worst case scenario, a little over $100,000, and I don't know how much he has available to.
Yeah, and I would assume, like with the police cars, that money isn't supposed to just use for all the equipment. There's already base money, so it's a supplement and not the whole thing.
Yes, the only thing right now is that the base money for this transition
Doesn't exist. Okay, right. But there is a replacement. I mean, like,
Yes, for two cycle equipment, yes.
Yeah,
there is a
okay.
So I'm gonna, for leisure services, because it's spread amongst all centers, not centralized, we typically, it is not a forecasted replacement that central services does. Ours is more of a pilot, the one tool that we have in hand. So for us, and my numbers again, I'm not slide, it's about 30,000. We said maybe half of year one. That is all. Oh, it is. They're just repairs. So it would be a little heavier on the front end just because it would be back unit and lighter on the. Because we're also looking at handheld units too. Okay. We actually have a lot of people that use them. I think they're hollows too. Where we don't need a full on back. Like for us, this is all a presentation to ask for funds from where we have.
Okay, got it.
One more follow-up. The other thing is we're going to learn a lot from doing this. So that's the advantage of taking it this direction. Because we'll find out, will these batteries function? Will the generators function? How long do they last? What does that look like? There's a lot of specs that are out there, but specs don't always live up to what they say. So we view this out of our office as being a great chance to pilot some things and see what the results are that will help inform us for how long.
So I think we're hearing from other departments talking about how they plan on transitioning. So I want to take this time to give a shout out to Siki and her team for transitioning already. I'll let Siki talk a little bit.
Well, that's because Commissioner Edwards, I will have to, I appreciate your apology, unnecessary, Commissioner Edwards, but I appreciate it. Commissioner Edwards had vocalized to us downtown. So last fiscal year, I put 10,000 in asked for 10,000 from you all. You all honored that so that we could go ahead and transition this year. And we're on our second, I will say it's still a struggle for us. They're not the batteries aren't lasting as long for our staff have, they like downtown to look good. And so towards the end, sometimes they get a little frustrated. I think one of our staff members said it might have brought him to tears. I think he was a little exaggerating, but they're getting used to it. And, and we're open to even trying. We're not exactly happy with our initial purchase. We've tried steel, and we may need to look at the newer steel. We tried steel 3 years ago, and it did not perform as we wanted it to. And so we might try a different one in July, because I had asked for money for the next 3 years so that we could attempt to try different brands to see what works for our application downtown. We're smaller, so we only have 2 full-time staff that work the leaf blowers and then 2 part-time on the weekend, but they use the same leaf blowers that the full-time staff do. So we're a little different. We a little more flexible and don't have near as many to replace as the other 2 departments. So that's why I guess we're running out there first, trying to do whatever we can. Have Mike throw at us whatever we can. We'll try out anything. And it does go to what Commissioner said. We're pretty visible too. So if we can figure out how to do this and do it well and safely for our staff, and we'll certainly learn our lessons and pass them forward.
Well, now just, y'all do a phenomenal job downtown. I mean, I'm downtown every day. I mean, you think thousands of people that go through there and thoughtlessly throw trash on the ground. I mean, and you have 2 full-timers. I'm thinking though, like of the workflow and how work is done downtown. And for me, I guess my main concern really is litter, trash that's on the ground. And so, if some of our staff are irritated by sort of some leaves and the pile of stuff that they can't really get to because their battery isn't powerful enough or whatever, I mean, for me, the leaves and the natural stuff is just kind of secondary. I mean, spot cleaning the litter, as long as there's no litter, then it's like, oh, a leaf fell, like, that's okay, help it all.
It does, but you've got 2 men that like seeing that concrete at the bottom. We've got two
Yeah.
staff members downtown, they've been there a long time.
Yeah.
They know what they like to see at the end of their shift. It's, you know, they'll change, you know, all of us have to be flexible. and
It is a
change.
different
So-
way of thinking. I think
And the only
that-
thing the leaves, I will tell you, Commissioner Evans, I do disagree when it's wet downtown. It can be
Yeah.
dangerous. You know, like if there are certain patches, like I
Right.
will say down on Thomas Street from Broad to Clinton, there's some trees down there that if you don't get the leaves off and it's wet and it's dark, they pile up, it gets icy, if it's too cold. That one is more of a safety concern along
Right.
just that stretch. Because I do get calls like that the leaves haven't been blown back in and now it's got a slippery situation. I can't think of any others that cause a real safety issue besides that patch on Thomas Street. But you know, it's you know, people get used to. They get used to that electric that blows everything and they can see the sidewalk, you know, and so I think it's just going to be a learning transition. But you know what? We're going to play that part that you said to them. Seriously. If they can hear it from y'all, I think they would appreciate it too, because they don't want the opposite to happen. Somebody's going to complain because it doesn't look as good as it historically did to them in their mind, because not every leaf is off the sidewalk.
I did not notice a difference
Okay.
in the transition.
Well, we're gonna bring that back up too. But I was gonna tell you, we're gonna talk, because they've been wondering if people, they ask us, both the litter techs will ask us if we've received complaints about it, because it's now been months that we've been using electric leaf blowers. So they've asked if we've had complaints, and we haven't personally had any complaints about the transition so
I
far.
think just, you know, the litter for me, that's just the key, because if you're in an environment and you don't see one piece of litter, it's like a sublime feeling to it.
No, I appreciate all the piloting that's going on, with this, and then the ability to try them out and share the information for what's going to work and not work. And, I'm going to have to go to an appointment, and I just want to share that I, and for us getting to where we have a budget recommendation or a plan 2 or 3 years or whatever is feasible, maybe for the next meeting, it can be in writing so that we can vote to send it to the full mayor and commission about, one, our commitment, and then how we're going to support it for whatever timeline is fair and reasonable. And I think that that's going to be a good example for the community, and then sharing our knowledge. We talked about that, but also the old fashioned way of using the litter picker uppers and brooms and stuff like that. It seems like they also have for some of those difficult corners that we have people calling about, that you might just have to sweep it up. And then with finals coming, that's when I get the most calls about the noise downtown. So that will be a good time of crisis studying for downtown, that maybe we won't get any calls about the noise of the leaf blowers and stuff.
Right. We haven't received a call in a while.
Well, I don't think they're studying yet. The spring is strong. It's not time to study.
Well, that's,
But anyway, that's
yeah,
the feedback.
that's a good point, Commissioner. Wright. Let's, you know, let's go ahead and pencil in, you know, some action next month on a budget recommendation, so we can get in the budget cycle. That's a good.
Was it much? Was that a motion?
No, y'all are still discussing. I've got to get to an appointment. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Can you send us the slideshow, by the way? So we have the numbers reference. So thought and a question. Thought is kind of piggybacking on the discussion earlier about leaves versus litter. And I super appreciate, I get kind of OCD about keeping things orderly too. And we have this very, you know, particularly landscaped urban environment where people, I think, do a fantastic job of trying to keep it looking the way it's been expected for so long. I'll just share that from my perspective. I think it's okay for us to transition expectations a bit, to welcome a bit more of the natural environment, to pervade our built environment a bit more. You know, I think there's something nice about being surrounded by plants, and plants have a sort of natural process they go through where they shed some of themselves, and that's not so bad. And the safety issues, I think, are something to take very seriously, especially in icy months. But and I think that goes for anywhere leaf blowers are being used. There's kind of this overarching question in my mind that I'm not going to pretend to have a good answer for y'all for, but we're looking for our perspective here. Like, minimizing the use and letting things lie, to me, seems like a best practice whenever possible. So that's just a direction I'd love to see us go more. I mean, there's some of the negative effects of these tools aren't just the health effects and the noise that we've talked about, but also like the killing of insects and things. So like the more we minimize this, the more we might have a pollinator friendly environment, et cetera. So I'm not a biological expert, but just thinking, in terms of how we as humans, live in a very built environment that's kind of different from the nature that I think Mr. Ward is especially passionate about making sure we preserve. My question is, I know there's a concern raised about staff needing more time to get the work done because the electric versions aren't as powerful. And so, is there a budgetary impact if we transition to 100% where you're going to need more staff, or staff is going to need to spend more time on this? There's going to be kind of a ripple effect.
Go ahead. No, Alex, go ahead.
From the leaf services perspective, I want to clarify for the record. So within parks, we are the ones doing the blowing and so along our Firefly and Greenway Trail, those are actually, I just want to clarify that for everybody. Most times when we're utilizing these, it is for the safety aspect to keep compliant, to keep the leaves down. We luckily do not have the litter intermix issue like downtown. So for us, we are either only blowing if it is a safety or keeping a safe access to a facility, like a boardwalk, trails. Other big times when we're getting actually ready for a rental. So people do rent a lot of all of our picnic shelters, all of our pavilions. That's the other time we're usually, and it is for the expectation of the renter that it not have a problem. So those are really our two times we're using them, is safety or to make it presentable for rent.
As far as production-wise, our main use is in the fall. And it's not so much as blowing leaves off the grass. We mulch the leaves, disperse them that way. It's cleaning the sidewalks. That's where our biggest issue comes with leaves on the sidewalks. We get complaints regularly of the leaves are on the sidewalks. During summer, we may have to be out there blowing fields off, etc., getting the grass clippings off sidewalks again.
And I would just,
no. I just wanted to actually thank you. Yeah, I'm, such an anti-environmentalist. That was a joke there, but to Commissioner Edwards. But I really appreciate that. I'm in the parks a lot and on my bike a lot using those trails, and I really think it is. I can't imagine we have enough staff to be doing something like homeowners are doing, where they're getting every leaf off the lawn, that we can just barely get the stuff off the streets and such. So I'm very appreciative of that, and want to continue that because it does become a safety issue. And having lived in a very woody area where I did not address lawns at all, there was quite a lot of action to get rid of leaves for safety for a car going down a sloping driveway and such. So I really appreciate all that work and the frustration one might feel with using a tool that isn't doing what it used to do.
And can I add one more thing for the safety? For transportation and public works is not here, but also that they are asking us sometimes we have to blow because they've had complaints on the bike lanes. It's unsafe for bikers. So I do have to keep the leads. And sometimes you might see our staff or their staff actually, quite frankly, will come down, and if they have a bike lane complaint where there's so much leaves build up, they will have to remove that for those type of, I don't want to discount, we only have that one section I get complaints about, but I do want to echo Alex and everything. Sometimes you'll see us in certain areas, and it is a definite safety issue for a biker in particular. For us is when we get, or a walker on that stretch of
yeah, and this was an issue in another area of District 7 on Woodland Parkway. I know that we had at one time allocated some funding for a
leaf back. Yeah, and I will tell you, during COVID, we were ready to pull the trigger on one. That whole company went out.
Right.
So we had a demo, even with that transportation, Stephen Bailey and our solid waste. We had a demo from the last competing company, and it was Commissioner, the equipment was subpar. So we're waiting. Okay. We're waiting a little bit. The money's still I think ours was in a capital for enterprise fund, so it sits there. I think if not, we'll Stephen has, I know some money sitting there waiting. We're waiting to see if some companies come. We've heard rumors that some other companies are trying to actually cobble together a better piece of equipment, but it was a very lackluster demonstration. They brought the piece of, some of you might have seen this, we were downtown using, the leaf back downtown.
So
A business opportunity.
the next step is we're getting this budget recommendation back, right?
That'll be a piece of it, yeah.
So yeah, I guess my request is, can that budget, update include estimates for staff time adjustments? Like a cost of labor adjustment, if that's, am I understanding that, or am I recalling correctly from the last conversation we had on this, that some of the larger landscapes that these tools are used on, you're probably gonna need more staff or staff time to get it done with these tools?
I think, Commissioner, what we're looking at is, and yes, we can certainly factor that in. We'll take our time to factor in whether our staffing is affected by this. The way it would be affected, though, from a landscape services standpoint, is in our cyclical rotations, 13 weeks and 6 weeks when we get around town and do that kind of work. It has yet to be seen if this is going to impact us from a timestamp.
Mm-hmm.
We could get out there with that machine right against the wall there, and we could just be fine. We don't lose any time. And that's part of the reason why we went with the more expensive option, at least to show you, is that we feel that is a comparable machine in terms of the power that it can distribute to what we have, and hopefully not have an effect on it taking an extra 30 minutes to blow something off than what it does right now. But we will look at that. I think hearing though today though as well, that if there's a different expectation, maybe perhaps from the commission on understanding that it may take us a little longer, and that as much as we don't want it to, it may affect some of those cycles, but that the alternative is we'd have to stay with gas. We're willing to work with you all on what your expectation is.
Yeah, what I'm seeking to avoid is to mandate that y'all change the tool and then you don't have enough people time
Absolutely.
to use the tools and get the work done, and then we've kind of painted you into a corner. So.
Sure. No, I appreciate that.
I think that's initially why we were working towards a pilot, right? So yeah, Sooki's piloted.
And we're not ready to speak on that yet, Commissioner. I was just not, we'd like a couple more months just to see where we are. And quite frankly, for us, it's going to be fall. It's going to be really the telling season for us. And just if it's going to take us some more time in those kind of safety areas with the leaves.
But I still think we can come back with either a 2 to 3 year recommendation. So I do want to let Alex talk about the 2 to 3 year recommendation that the services might have and the budget associated with it. Sure. Maybe it's not this particular slide. Maybe it's the next slide that might be beneficial for you, Alex.
Right.
I didn't know if you wanted to add anything.
Well, I did allude to this earlier. We did show at the last meeting a 3 year, and we're directed to do a 2 year. On the left is the backpack version, and on the right is the handheld. For us, we have a lot of handhelds as well. Do you mind getting the other slide?
Yeah.
So I do want to highlight one interesting thing that it can be a pro and can be a con. This is sold as a system. Multiple pieces make up the backpack unit, and the battery, which is the backpack, is interchangeable. This is the larger one that we purchased. It's a 3,000. There's a 2,000 version, which is lighter, but of course the running times can be reduced. So it's interesting because you can kind of choose your own adventure a little bit. Mm-hmm. We also purchased a combination head, so you can take the same battery and operate like a weed eater, an edger, something like that. We do see that the performance is reduced, the edger, the gas edger compared to like the battery edger, but we're using it on such a small scale. I'm not speaking for central services and anything that they say. They're going to be the experts when it comes to that. But for leisure services, for our use, intended use, I think that we could pull off, if we were funded, 2 years implementation, and we'd be happy with how we use them.
I have a question on that implementation, the 2 versus 3. With the testing of this, I mean, I'm kind of hesitant to say, like, if you go for 1 year, like why, if you were doing that, because the technology and the equipment's sort of changing every year, and so and the batteries fitting together and all of those things. And so I don't like, the 2-year might mean that everything fits together better, but it doesn't mean it fits together better. And then we have a less effective, efficient piece of equipment because something new comes out at the end of year 2.
And we run into that currently.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes,
That's true.
we're using the Cobalt platform at this place, but we're using the steel platform at Sandy Creek Park. And so that's the one good thing about talking this thing globally as an ACC is we really could talk about picking a platform, sticking with it. And for these guys, it's a lot more.
And actually, maybe you guys know, I mean, is there any kind of, I don't know.
This one we talked about at the top of the meeting. I gave
Oh,
Mr. Jones the number of a gentleman who consulted.
right. I heard that. I did hear that on my way down here. Yes. Yes, I did hear that.
So I'm thinking, I would like to see some action taken there.
Yeah.
Reaching out to him, to help through this process, so we're not, maybe we can learn from his mistakes,
Yeah.
so we don't make the same ones.
We'll commit to calling the gentleman between now and the next meeting. If we learn anything drastically different, we'll come back and present that.
Yeah.
But if we don't learn anything drastically different, would you like us to put together just a 2 to 3 year or 2-year, 3-year?
I'm thinking maybe,
all 3 departments.
maybe we could reach out to him, share what we've learned so far.
Yeah.
Get his feedback. If he says to us, yeah, good job, y'all are on the right track, looks good. I'd say that's an important vote of confidence in what we've been doing here. I mean, this is a nationwide expert in this stuff. And then, yeah, I think I'd be ready for a recommendation on a budget proposal for this fiscal year.
Do you think the audio recording is going to pick up the sound?
That is not our lead government.
We're on that.
There it is. Second story.
Thank you for asking that question. As far as technology evolving,
Yeah.
it was 2 years ago that we, Social Services, purchased the Ego blower that solid waste you see now. That original battery, we got 20 minutes out of it. And just 2 years later, the backpack loader that they're using with Social Services, we almost got 3 hours. So technology is evolving. And how's that going to answer your question and how's that going to impact our services? Can't answer that right now. It may hurt us this year, 2 years from now, we may have no issues whatsoever.
I mean, 3 hours is impressive. I mean, if you've got a bank of batteries that you can go back to as well, I mean, that's maybe you change it once and you get a 6-hour shift of continuous flowing. I mean,
It's a
That's a day's
vast
work.
improvement.
Yeah.
You just ask the same questions, to invest in a full fleet on these right now, in 2 years, it could be so much better.
Right.
I would also want to pilot something like this, like generator, because the charge time is shorter than the use time. So it's going to run longer than it takes to charge. That way we can have that continual replacement.
Yeah.
Is the goal. Hopefully we'll bridge that.
That's great. That's great. And yeah, I guess one final thing I thought I have now, or thought I've got now, is just that we thoughtfully communicate to our staff that are operating these existing gas machines, some of this knowledge that we've learned throughout these meetings of the harms with the 2-stroke engine exhausts, the dust harm. I think we might see that we get an increase in compliance with PPP wearing and increased awareness. I think we should be good employers and share this knowledge that we've just learned about the harms of these gas blowers.
I want to come back to that proposal for next week and how this follows through in terms of budgeting and such. Because, we put other things in the budget a year ago that were not fleshed out. we haven't totally fleshed this out, but it's a lot more than a couple of things we did put in the budget. So I guess if there's any way to get some kind of ballpark idea right now, even if we don't have the specific plan about how much we would be asking for to squeeze into the budget. I mean, the thing I like about this and all the 100% stuff, more or less, is that you're putting something into the budget that has a payback, but, we don't have to add more staffing. It's not adding more programming, it's just adding the staffing. So in terms of costs, it's more manageable in some way. And it's not like we're going to continue using leaf blowers. That's not going to go away, unless we have a real transition.
So the ballpark cost for equipment right now seems to be around $100,000. I think that one safety modeling looks like the services got about 17, 10, and I think something else on it. So
For a first year or
for year one,
yeah,
for year one is like $100,000.
total. Okay, committee.
So we'll get ideas from the consultant, get feedback, just get that stamp of approval from an independent expert. And then weigh it next month.
So.
That's 100,000 beyond what's already captured in departments.
That's correct.
It's not in requests.
So I think the question I thought Nikki asked, and so you're saying, I think we actually do we want you guys to look at it for 2 to 3 years. So what you're saying is come back and then we'll let them know 2 to 3 years.
Come back with both.
Okay.
Come back with both.
Yeah.
Yeah. For us to go with.
And with some of the pros and cons of like the technology, if we learn anything from this expert who's going to say, hey, don't invest everything this year because we expect there to be a five-hour battery in 2 years.
Excuse me, can I add something also to the expert that we contacted?
Sure.
We have no information on the trash.
Okay,
As of
Good.
right now.
let's get it.
Our garbage can cannot run these.
Sure.
It has no point, they'll look at it, but in trash can.
Yeah, you can't really fix a battery. Yeah.
Well, the actual blower itself
Yeah.
is totally different mechanically. And the manufacturer, every piece of equipment that's damaged, et cetera, has to go back to
Yeah,
the manufacturer.
sure. That
We
makes
have
sense.
no idea, I tried calling still to say, hey, what does this part cost? What's this? Well, we don't know, we'll get back with you. And I said, yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a question on it already too. Just ask what I need to do. Well, we contacted the manufacturer, it's under warranty, but it's a process job. It's a lot different than taking our, the steel to, we used to use, the guy on Lexington. Yeah, and they would fix it real quick, easy and inexpensively. They don't touch electric, but Freddie is, I mean, they have responded to Freddie and we're gonna get an exchange for the unit, but it's a little different is what we're finding out, a little slower. Yep.
Same experience with not this brand, but the data center uses a Ryobi platform. So I had to send the whole thing, had to get a whole replacement. That replacement didn't work out of the box, had to send that back. So it does add.
Yeah, those are great things.
Yeah.
Maybe we can factor that into the budget requesting announcement.
Well, yeah, it'd be a good question for the consultant too. I know we're throwing a lot of.
It's all right. It's all right.
Questions here.
Should be.
That's a good point. Thank you. Okay, I guess just putting a period on this, including as pertains to our noise ordinance, as some of you are probably aware, the state legislature, there were some legislators that proposed some preemptive legislation to halt any of our work with regards to this issue. But that failed. That did not succeed this past session. So we have clearance to have this discussion and talk about not just what we're doing to get our own house in order, but also creating a more peaceful community, especially in light of all the folks who are working from home nowadays. But I think also importantly, just creating a peaceful environment for our families that live in neighborhoods, giving maybe at least one day of peace from gas blowing, one day of peace from, or maybe no commercial gas blowing on the weekend, something that maybe we could do for some of our residents to encourage the private market to operate during typical business hours and not just have free reign to go out whenever using these harmful machines that I think I saw on one slide, continuous exposure to noise above 65 decibels and creates hypertension and increased prevalence of strokes and just other health maladies, environmental health throughout our communities. So creating a quieter, more peaceful environment in our neighborhoods, I think benefits our citizens, but also has other external ramifications that are probably hard to predict. I mean, we create a more attractive community. People want to live here. It's a quieter place, a more thoughtful place. So just wanted to bring that back into the conversation since it is part of our charge, and we still, due to the failure at the state level, have clearance to explore this topic. Any other thoughts from the committee before we adjourn?
We're gonna be back here in person next month, first Thursday.
We'll see. Well, I think we'll make that. Or yeah, actually, let's pick out a date at least.
We have confirmed quorum for next meeting on the agenda.
Well, in that case,
Yes.
and the agenda was approved, so we must comply.
So that'd be Thursday, the 5th of May.
It'd be Thursday the 12th, and I do like having those meetings.
We usually do first Thursday.
I know, and I think it's a little awkward having this meeting immediately after our regular meeting,
I do too.
because then we act, and then the regular meeting doesn't get our information to 3 or 4 weeks later.
So the logic behind that when we did it was actually that when we have something that's ready to go from the committee, it gets into the agenda cycle for the next month.
Yeah, that's why we did it.
That
That's
was,
that.
yeah, that was the conversation.
Thank you.
It's just stressful meeting back to back, I just tell y'all, but I'm good, but that was the reason. Y'all just let me know.
No, hold on. Okay, so you're telling me.
As long as we have everybody here, we start.
We're working on it. We're working on it. So, Mr. Jones, it makes sense to you from a bureaucratic standpoint to meet the first Thursday of the month?
It does.
For optimal bureaucratic operational efficiency?
Effective decision efficiency.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go. We'll do Thursday, May 5th. There you go.
Optimizing our efficiency.
In person, right?
We'll see.
Wait, can we just decide now so that we're not?
What, why do we?
We are in a pandemic, but okay,
Okay,
we will say in person now. We'll pencil it in person for now. If something changes, we'll be sure to text Commissioner Myers a few hours in advance.
I was sitting there reading those minutes, making notes, trying to find the link.
It's all good. It's all good. We got it done. And we'll have a great meeting next month. I appreciate everyone's attendance and diligence. Thank you, staff, for your presentations and thoughtfulness. As always, we have a great staff in this county. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? So, any objections? All right, unanimous consent.
Thank you.
Thank you.